guys, it's Vicky. Hello and welcome back to my channel. Thank you for joining me. Today is going to be a Pgce Q&A video. So all of these questions I have got from my Instagram over at Miss Green Teach. You should follow me if you don't already, or set up a teachergram because that is a Pgce essential. Thank you for everyone that sent a question in. I really appreciate it, and I've tried to answer as many as I can in this video, but there was a lot and a few that overlapped, so I've tried to put some together, and I'll try to answer as many as I can without making this video really long and boring. So yeah, hope this is helpful and you enjoy. If I don't answer something and you still want to know the answer, then you can always send me a message over at Miss Green Teach on Instagram, or leave it down in the comments below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So I've tried to put them in like a logical order. I'm not sure if I've done that right, but we're going to go for it and dive straight in. So the first question is, how did I choose where to do my Pgce? So lots of you for this year will probably already be sorted with that, but for years to come, I chose based on, there's lots to consider when you're deciding where to do your Pgce. So I decided based on where I was going to be living. At the time I was working at a school in Chichester, so I applied for the Uni of Chichester, and I applied for UCL because UCL was the number one, is the number one for education in the UK. So I thought I'd go for those two. I also went for the University of East London just in case I didn't get a place at one of those. So then I knew that if I continued to work at the school in Chichester and do my Pgce alongside, then I could live there. And if not, then I'd be coming home and I could commute into London while doing my Pgce. That was the biggest factor for me, but obviously there's other things you should look at. Like if you're happy to move out and go living in accommodation or rent a house somewhere, then you might want to look at their rankings and what modules they do and student experience and things like that. So there's lots to think about, but just make sure you check out what people who have done it think of it before you go. Next up is there anything I wish that I'd done differently before starting my Pgce, or anything extra I wish I'd done? And to be honest, I don't think there is. I ordered some books and I read through some of them, and I got a lot of sleep, and that's exactly what I recommend that you do before you start your Pgce. If you want to look at some books I recommend, then that's in one of my last videos, Pgce Essentials and updated book recommendations. Have a look at those. I highly recommend like behaviour management books because that's something you'll be doing straight away. In addition to that, some subject knowledge books would be good. So if there's any gaps that you have that you've already identified in your subject knowledge, then this would be a good time to just read over. There's not too much pressure, but read over and try and fill any gaps that you have. So for example, my biggest gap was with grammar. So I got Carol Vorderman's How to Help Your Children with English or something like that. It's in my book recommendation video. And that really helped me. So fill any gaps in subject knowledge, read some behaviour management books, and get lots of sleep and relax. Someone asked if there's any stationery or equipment that you need, and to be honest, I'd say no, you don't need anything. I had a pencil case with a pen, a pencil, rubber, a highlighter in it, and that was helpful. I would recommend a piece of technology if you want to keep your evidence file on a computer, but again, that's something I spoke about in my Pgce Essentials video, so check that out. Someone asked how I organised my file or evidence bundle. So for me, I actually went 100% online for my evidence bundle. So everything for me was on my iPad, which is why I recommend having a piece of equipment. I actually created a Google Drive especially for my Pgce, and then in there I have all of my folders. So there's one for each module of lectures, there's lesson plans, meeting logs, and then a folder for each placement that we did, and then a specialism folder. And then within each placement folder I have observations, performers, which are all the forms that we have to fill out, and then the meeting logs from each week in there, and any PLTs that we had to do, which are like the tasks that you do to help give you evidence. To be honest, my tip would be I prefer going on a computer because it's all there in one place and I feel secure that I'm not going to lose anything. Some people like to have it in paper, but then I'd say that there's a lot of forms that you need to fill out and stuff like that, so you probably need a printer as well, and it's going to get expensive. I prefer doing it with technology, but you've got to do what works for you. So also, as soon as you get something that gives you a piece of evidence, you just need to make sure you put it in the right place, because otherwise you're going to lose things. There's so many forms and pieces of paper and bits like that. As soon as you get something that you think, oh, this would work for my evidence folder, then just put it in straight away, because otherwise there's paper everywhere, you're never going to find it again. I don't know if you can hear music in the background, but there's like some workers in my garden at the moment. We're having our garden done and working 9 to 5. You don't need to hear me singing, but every now and then I have a little. Another question was, how do I plan my week? So with UCL, we have weekly meeting logs, and these are meetings that take place between you and your class teacher mentor, whoever they are. And in that you discuss evidence that you've collected so far towards your teacher standards. You discuss what you're going to be doing in the next week. I also downloaded this little form that I will show you now. And it's just like a weekly thing. So it has each week on it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the days of the week across the top. And as we went through in our meeting logs and we decided that I was taking certain lessons, I'd just mark it on there in different colours for different lessons, just so I knew that I had that lesson coming. And if at any point I forgot, or I wasn't sure what was happening the next day or over the next week, or I needed to know what I needed to plan, then I could just come back to that really quickly and see, oh, I'm teaching this day, or I've got PPA this day, or I'm having my observation on that day. So planning your weeks was really helpful through those meetings with your class teacher mentors. And I do recommend that you try and have weekly meetings, even if your uni don't recommend it, because it just helps you to keep everything in order. And then I knew that every Monday I'd have my meeting, and then I'd know what I'm doing for the following week, and just made me feel prepared and like I knew what was going on. The next question is, was it hard to establish a work-life balance? And I have to say, at the start of the PGCE, it wasn't too difficult. Obviously, I had a different experience to likely other people will have, as I was doing my PGCE during lockdowns and COVID times. However, so that meant that all of my time could be spent during my PGCE and focusing on my practice and teaching and subject knowledge and stuff like that, because I wasn't allowed to leave the house to go and do anything else. So that was definitely a positive in some ways. But I don't think it would be too much of a struggle to establish a work-life balance during the first term or even the first 2 terms. As long as you're organised and you know what you need to do and you get it done. Like, there's plenty of time, I believe, to get it done during the working day, or at least the working day and then a couple of hours after school. You shouldn't need to work at the weekends during your first term or first 2 terms of your PGCE. When it comes to your 3rd term, I'd say things change a bit. You're taking 80 to 100% of lessons, you're planning a lot, there's all these sheets to fill out, you're also doing essays and tasks for uni. There's a lot going on at that point, and for me, things started opening out of lockdown then, and that was a real struggle trying to balance all of those different things. So I did struggle in my 3rd term. However, I do think it's doable if you're organised, and sometimes I knew that, okay, I need to spend this weekend, and yeah, the entire weekend working. I spend Saturday and Sunday planning lessons, writing essays, etc., so that I knew that the following weekend I had plans and I wanted to go out with my friends. So it's about forward thinking. It's about planning out in the future as much as you can, so that you can get things done when you have the time and make time for doing other things when you need to. I do think that having that time where you see your friends is really important. And throughout the majority of term 3, I tried to have 1 day of my weekend off. Wasn't always successful, but I think it was helpful to try and set that boundary. Also in the evenings, during term 3, I always ended up doing work. However, during term 1 and 2, I didn't always end up working. There isn't as much to do as during term 3. So I think it's quite doable, but you need to think to the future and plan ahead as much as possible. To-do lists are your best friend. Okay, let me add in here. You need a to-do list for everything. I have some examples of how I've done my to-do list on my Instagram page at Miss Green Teach. And I do like needs, wants, if time. So like 3 sections of my to-do list, and really helped me to like prioritise and think, okay, this is what I need to get done, get that done. I'd like to do this. If I have time, then I'll do this too. And I really found that helpful. So maybe you want to check that out. The next question is how you manage time after school without falling asleep. And let me tell you, this is a challenge. I've always loved my sleep. Okay, so I can always nap. And during my 1st term, when I came in from placement, I napped almost every day. I come in from school and I just need to sleep for an hour. Let me tell you that placement is draining. Getting used to being in the classroom and getting asked questions and always having to be on your A game is really difficult. And I struggled with that. And I'd come in and I'd have a nap, and then I wouldn't even do work later, to be honest. There wasn't that much to do during my 1st term, as long as you actually work during the day. But as you kind of do get used to it as you go on, as you take on more responsibility. I liked the way that we did it at UCL because it was really slow progression, and it really built it up in pieces. So by the time I got to my third term and I was taking 100% of lessons, I felt like I could do that, and that I could plan the lessons, that I could come home and keep working. It's just getting used to it, and you will need to nap probably when you come in from school after your first placement, because it's tiring and there's a lot going on, but you do get used to it as you progress, and it's not something that you need to stress about. Hopefully your uni will support you in a way that will help you to get through it. UCL were really good at that, and yeah, I'm always here if you need any help or any advice or someone to chat to. So another question that links to that last one is a typical evening after the kids go home. What is it like after the students leave? So after we just dismiss the students, it depends on the school that you're at. Sometimes you might have like team meetings, some evenings you'll have CPD, staff briefing, something like that. But for the most part for me on my Pgce, I would then spend time either in a meeting with my class teacher mentor, in a team meeting, so a meeting with like the year group, and then I'd be planning lessons, talking things through with my mentor, getting lesson observation feedback, just learning as much as I can in as many different ways as I can, talking to other teachers, talking to different subject leads, different like the behaviour leads, talking to as many people as you possibly can, getting to know the school at the start of your placement, and then trying to get ahead. Use that time to your advantage. You have about 2 hours probably after the students leave until you'll leave. So if you use those 2 hours to like really do some good lesson plans, then you shouldn't need to do the work when you get home. So I tried not to get distracted during that time and to really focus and get some work done. And I think that was really helpful in then helping me to create a work-life balance. So yeah. The next question is how I wind down and what I do when I think of leaving teaching. And there were a couple of moments during my Pgce where I wasn't sure that this was for me. Pgce is a really tough year. And I always struggled when I heard people say that, because how can it be that hard? And to be honest, for the first term and a half, I was like, it's not as hard as people are saying that it is. Like, this is quite doable. And then I got to term 3 and I was like, it was difficult. Okay, it was really rough, but it's important that you have ways to wind down. So I really like rock climbing. I really like swimming. These are things that I do when I need some me time, and I just think it's really important that you have those things, whether that be something really simple like going for a walk. I used to like painting. There needs to be something that you can do when you need that time for you. Really important. And I know that not everyone who does Pgce is in my situation where I'm, you know, single, living at home, don't have the responsibility of running a house, don't have kids. But even if you are in that position, you still need to have something that's yours, something that you can do to separate yourself from being a teacher, separate yourself from any responsibility, just to turn your brain off for a bit, because you will be going, your brain is going 24/7 as a teacher, and it's important that you have some time for you. And then what I do when I think of leaving, honestly, I'm not sure. I think that's very personal for everyone. Everyone is likely to have a reason why they go into teaching, and I think that needs to be your driving force. That needs to be your thing that you can think, well, why am I here? Why am I doing this when you need to? And sometimes I had those moments and I need to think about, okay, what am I doing here? Why is it important that I become a teacher? Why is this what I want to do with my life? And when you think those things through and you remember the reasons that you applied and you're doing this in the first place, it kind of all makes it worth it. Don't get me wrong, it's still rough, it's still hard, but it's important to have those things that keep you going when you need it. So the next question is, what's the difference between Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2? And the question after that really links, so I'll say that as well. It's the difference between the year groups that I've taught. So I haven't actually done a placement in Key Stage 1. I opted to be a Key Stage 2 teacher. That's because I was a house mistress and TA last year, and I worked a fair bit across the board in Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2. And I definitely preferred Key Stage 2. For me, it was the levels of neediness, I guess. I like my students to be able to blow their own nose and go to the toilet without having accidents and things like that. That's just not something that I want to be dealing with as a teacher. In Key Stage 2, I love the conversations you can have with the students and their creativity, the things they come back with, that you can hold a proper conversation with them, and that's something that I really like. They also understand my jokes a lot more, and I like it when people laugh at my jokes. So yeah, the key differences that I found being in, so I was in year 3 and year 5, so they're still both key stage 2, but there was a big difference there. In year 3, everything takes a lot longer, to be honest. They need a lot longer to write the date and the title. There's other basics that need covering, such as handwriting, which in year 5 don't need covering. There's spending a lot more time with the printer and the guillotine, because you cut out and stick in a lot more in year 3 than you do in year 5. And I thought that would save me time, because I spent so much time with the printer and the guillotine, like cutting everything out the right shape, so you just have to stick it in. But just sticking a sheet in takes a very long time. So the key difference that I found between year 3 and year 5 is the amount of time it takes for things to get done. Even the basic things, be that waiting for silence, writing the date, standing in a line, takes a long time in year 3, whereas in year 5 is something that they can just do very quickly. And that's very important. It needs to be, you know, like taken into account when you're doing your lesson planning and how long everything's going to take. That was the key differences that I noticed. The next question was how to deal with travel, especially without a car. So this will depend again on your uni and their like placement schools. So for UCL, we filled out a form at the start of our Pgce which told them, you know, if we had a train station near us, if we had a car, if we were happy to walk to schools, like all things like that. We gave them our postcode and how far we'd like to travel, and they took all of these things into account. So I was really lucky, or I'm lucky that I do drive, and that I have a car. And for my first placement, I drove about 25 minutes to get to my school, which was really easy. For my second placement, it was in central London, so it didn't really make sense for me to drive, so I just got on a train. It did take me about an hour to get to my second placement, and that is the longest that they expect you to travel at UCL. I didn't hear from anyone that I know who did the course that travelled any longer than an hour, but it will depend on how your uni does it. I think travelling an hour is a good maximum to have. That took a lot of my time, and it taught me that I want to live closer than an hour to the school that I work in. It's a good experience to have, and I mean, I've experienced commuting before because I went to sixth form in central London, but I kind of like being in the city, but I don't like the commute that comes along with it. So travelling is something you can work out. If you have extenuating circumstances, such as you're a parent or a carer, then you're, does that come under extenuating circumstances? I don't know, but they do ask that. And they will take that into consideration when giving you your placement schools. But it will also depend on where your uni has schools. If they have a lot around you, then they'll be able to place you in schools that are nearer to you. And if they don't, then they won't. So maybe that's something worth checking out if you're really concerned about travel before you apply, or before you decide which uni to accept an offer from. This next question is, do you have any tips for the student-mentor relationship and making a good first impression? So I have to say that your student-mentor relationship, the relationship between you and your class teacher, is a really important one. And I really believe it can make or break your time on your Pgce. It's vital, and it can mean that you have a brilliant time or that you really do not enjoy your Pgce. So it's worth taking some time and investing in that relationship, in my opinion. For making a good first impression, I'd say just dress smart. And so for the first couple of days of placement, before I really know the dress code at school, I always dressed very smart with like a blazer and like nice shoes, straight black trousers, just look really nice and smart. And I think it just gives that first impression that you're taking this seriously, you really want to be here and you're ready to learn. Going forward, I'd say that just being really open and receptive to feedback is very important. You're there to learn. For the most part, mentors shouldn't, be taking too much. They shouldn't be asking you to do too much. They shouldn't be asking you to make displays or doing things outside of what they are doing. They shouldn't be treating you like a TA. However, TAing is also a good way to learn. For my first placement, I spent a good amount of time going round like a TA would, checking work and like just developing that relationship with the students, because that was really helpful. So it's important to do things that your mentor asks of you. My mentor asked me to make some displays, and I did that because that looked good for my teacher standards, for my evidence bundle, and linked into some lessons that I did observations for. But she didn't ask for too much. She wasn't asking me to make displays all the time. She also made displays. So it's about finding that balance with your teacher mentor, but developing that relationship is really important. I'd say be open to doing different things, to saying yes when they ask you to do things, but also you need to be careful and make sure that you're doing things that are helping you and that are contributing towards your evidence, rather than things that are making their life easier. I was really lucky in that I never had that experience. Both of my class teacher mentors were just absolutely amazing, and I feel like I helped them, but for the most part they helped me, and they were brilliant. But being receptive to feedback has to be one of the most important things. They're a class teacher mentor because they've been doing this job for a while. They know more than you do, and they're trying to help you through giving you feedback. So take it on as best as you can. It's not always easy to hear, and I definitely had some lessons like that. But at the end of the day, it will help you, and try and make those changes that they recommend to your lessons in your next ones. And they'll see that and they'll appreciate that, and they'll continue to help you as much as possible. So yeah. So the final question today was, do I have any advice for teaching your first lesson? I can't remember teaching my first lesson. I must have documented it somewhere on my YouTube channel or on my Teachergram or something. But I'm sure it's really stressful, and the first thing I do is make sure you know when you're going to do it way in advance. Make sure you've had plenty of time before your first lesson to observe your class teacher mentor, to see the way that they run their lessons and the way that they like things done, because you're going to want to do things in a similar way, because it will mean that they're going to like the way that you do your lesson, because they obviously like the way that they do their lessons. So if you can like magpie the structure or the way they do activities to some extent, then that might be good for you. I'd also say, yeah, so know about it way in advance so you can plan it way in advance. When you've planned it, hopefully, you know, like you've planned it early, like way before you need to do it. Run through your plan with your class teacher mentor. Say, do you think this will work? Do you think I should add activity somewhere? What do you think about this activity? How long do you think this would take? Take as much from them as you can. Ask them all the questions. They know what they're doing. They'll be happy to help you. Ask as much as you need. And then I'd say hopefully by the time that you're giving your first lesson, you've developed a good relationship with your students and the students in your class, so that you know who's confident, who's not confident. You need to like ease in with asking questions to the right students, have that strong behaviour management right from the start, like follow the behaviour management policy at the school and make sure they understand your expectations, that you have high expectations of them right from the start. I think that's something that you can easily slip right from the start. If you're not clear about how you expect them to behave in your lessons, then they can take a little bit too much, and then it keeps going like that and it just gets worse and worse. So I'd say right from the start you need to be quite strict and quite firm in your lessons. Doesn't mean that you can't have fun with them, but when someone's pushing the boundaries, you need to let them know, and it's fine to do that in front of the class so that everyone understands that you're a serious teacher and that you're here to teach them and they're here to learn. It's hard doing that first lesson and taking that step from being an observer and kind of a TA to being at the front of the class and taking a lesson. I'd say you have to go in with confidence and just give it your all. The students don't always know this is your first lesson. They know that you've been around the class helping, but they don't know this is the first time you've ever taught a class. So go in, be confident, act like you've done it before, believe in yourself. And if it all goes wrong, it really doesn't matter. That's what your Pgce is for. If things don't go to plan, that's okay. You can go back, talk to your class teacher mentor, reevaluate why didn't it work, what did work, what was successful. I guarantee in every lesson there'll be something that went well, at least one thing that went well, many things that went well. So it's okay if things don't go well, because things don't go well for very experienced teachers. There's nothing wrong with that. It's about taking a step back after and evaluating and saying, well, why didn't that go well? Reflecting upon your practice and thinking, well, what could I have done to have stopped that, or to have continued the lesson in a more, so they would learn more or something like that. Yeah, I hope that's helpful. I feel like I've rambled quite a lot in this video, and I'm quite sorry if that's how it's come across, but I've tried to give you as much information as I can based on the questions that you've asked. If there's anything else you want to know, then please do leave it below or send me a message. Finally, I'd like to mention, people ask a lot about any book recommendations for your PGCE year, and I have done a video on that in my PGCE Essential and Updated Book Recommendations, so I recommend you go and check that out before you start your PGCE, or there's some books there that are good for reading over the summer, so yeah, check that out. I hope this has been helpful and that you've enjoyed this video. Like I said, if there's anything else you want to know, then I'm always happy to answer any questions. Just let me know. Yeah, if you've enjoyed this video, then please give it a thumbs up and maybe even subscribe if you're feeling, you know, really kind. You can find me over on Instagram and Twitter at Miss Green Teach, and I'll help you where I can. See you in the next one. Bye guys. There was a question about planning, and that is something that I will do a full video on at some point. It's not something that I can really answer in 2 minutes, like I'm trying to keep each answer to in this video. So I'm going to leave it for now, but I will answer it at some point in a full video about, you know, how I plan, the format that I use for my lessons, and probably my evaluations as well. So keep an eye out for that, it is coming.